A lost bear cub collapsed in a backyard. Then a little girl did something no one expected. A single yelp broke the hush of a late autumn afternoon as something small and dark staggered into Lily Mayfield's backyard in the foothills near the Great Smoky Mountains National Park. At first glance, it looked like a stray dog, but as Lily crept forward, her eyes went wide with wonder. It was a bear cub mud, caked and trembling on spindly legs. Heart pounding, she stood there, her curly auburn hair brushing the base of her neck. The cub collapsed, chest heaving as though it had come a great distance. With no adults around, Lily faced a fateful choice she never expected to make. The rusted metal mailbox at the front edge of the Mayfield property stood as a silent sentinel, announcing in chipped, white lettering 165 Blue Ash Lane. The small house sat nestled among tall pines, and beyond the backyard fence, a thinning line of hardwoods gave way to the wide vistas leading up into the Smokies. On any given day, deer meandered across the meadow. Sometimes wild turkeys pecked for seeds near the fence posts, and the mountains themselves brooded in the distance, majestic yet mysterious. Inside this modest home lived 9-year-old Lily Mayfield, a child with a spark of curiosity forever shining in her warm brown eyes. The Mayfields had moved here when Lily was just 5. They fell in love with the quiet nights, the crisp mountain air, and the closeness to nature that so many families from bigger towns rarely experienced. Her parents, David and Sarah, encouraged Lily's fascination with wildlife. On weekends, they often took her to Cades Cove, a lush valley surrounded by mountains in the Great Smoky Mountains National Park, where black bears roamed freely among the cove's meadows. While Lily's mother spent hours photographing wildflowers and woodland creatures for her nature blog, her father would teach Lily how to identify different animal tracks along the trails. It was in these shared moments that Lily's spirit bonded with the forest, forging a deep-seated love and respect for all living things. Yet nothing could have prepared the family for the day a bear would show up without warning on the wrong side of the fence. It happened late in the afternoon on a Saturday, just after Lily had come inside to rummage for a snack. She had left the back door open, letting in a cool breeze scented with evergreen and damp leaves. She found a pack of salted crackers, broke them into pieces, then stepped out onto the wooden back porch to see if any squirrels would venture close enough to accept the treats from her hand. That was when she noticed it, a creature stumbling through the dried leaves toward her yard. Lily froze. For a moment, she thought it might be a small dog, but the creature's rounded ears, snout, and thick, shaggy fur, though matted with dirt, made her realize this was no dog. Shock raced through her, sending a flurry of sensations into her arms and legs. She'd seen black bears from afar at Cades Cove, but never in her own yard and never so close. The cub might have been about half her weight, maybe 40 or 50 pounds. It managed a few tremulous steps, then collapsed on the grass near the drooping tomato vines in the corner of the fence. Lily's heart hammered inside her chest. She felt torn. Every rule she had ever learned told her to stay away, find an adult, and never approach a wild bear, especially if it was alone. But the pitiful sight gripped her heart. The cub was panting, its flanks heaving as it tried and failed to stand. Dust coated its legs, and across its muzzle, Lily noticed a small scratch oozing fresh blood. Before fear could override her compassion, Lily set her crackers aside, descended the porch steps, and knelt on the grass a cautious distance away. "Mum! Dad!" Lily called over her shoulder. No answer. Her parents had gone to buy groceries in nearby Townsend. Usually they let Lily stay home for half an hour at a time, trusting her to be safe and responsible. They could not have imagined a scenario like this. Lily gulped, her mind racing. Help was nowhere near, and the cub was clearly too weak to move. Lily edged closer, her heart brimming with worry. Despite her father's warnings, never approach a wild animal unless it's in an emergency, she felt an unbreakable draw to do something. She had grown up learning about these creatures, respecting their boundaries. Yet in that moment, gazing into the wide, fearful eyes of this helpless cub, Lily followed her instincts. Gently, she crept up and placed a small piece of cracker within reach of its nose. For a second, the cub's eyes fluttered, not comprehending. Then, as if delirious with hunger, it inched its snout toward Lily's offering, licked the crumbs, and let out a soft whimper. Lily breathed a trembling sigh of relief. Her hand shook, but a sense of responsibility seeped through her fear. If the cub was injured or starving, she had to help. She didn't know exactly how, but leaving it to die or suffer felt impossible. When Lily reached out with a second piece of cracker, the cub let out a faint growl, almost a squeak, lacking the strength to sound truly threatening. Lily remained still, her hand trembling but steady enough to avoid sudden moves. Minutes passed in hushed suspense until, finally, the cub leaned forward again, licking the bits of food. By the time the cub finished, Lily realized she needed more than snacks to nurse it back to health. She glanced around. Her parents kept no specialized animal supplies, and the phone inside wouldn't do much good. She was too young to drive it to a wildlife rescue, and her parents were not yet home. Lily knew that, in many cases, adult bears roam nearby, but there was no sign of the cub's mother. Perhaps the mother had been injured or separated, or maybe it had wandered off in search of food. The reasons were endless, but what mattered was that no help was in sight. In a moment of impulsive resolve, Lily decided to bring the cub into the garage, at least to keep it safe and contained until her parents got back. She hurried inside, grabbed a soft blanket from a closet, and returned to the yard. The animal did not protest much as she draped the blanket gently over its body. It tried to stand, only to wobble and collapse again. Panic twisted Lily's stomach. The cub's condition seemed dire. Its whimpers sounded ragged, like it had no energy to cry with real force. Despite her petite frame, Lily did her best to lift the cub. Her arms strained, but adrenaline and compassion fueled her. The cub's eyes fluttered shut, as if trusting her or simply too drained to resist. She carried it blanket and all across the backyard and into the open garage. There, she laid it down on a makeshift bed of old towels and a spare comforter. After turning on the overhead light, she inspected the small wound on its muzzle. It wasn't deep, but it was crusted with dirt. Her mind raced with half-remembered tips from her father's first aid lessons, but that was for domestic pets and humans, not wild animals. Footsteps crunched in the driveway. Lily heard the muffled sound of her parents unloading groceries. Her chest clenched with sudden anxiety. She did not know how they would react: anger at her for taking this risk, or relief that she saved the bear. Yet she had no time to dwell on this, because, to her alarm, the cub began breathing in shallow bursts. She knelt beside it, stroked its fur, and whispered, "It's okay, I'm here." David Mayfield nearly dropped a bag of groceries when he peeked into the garage and saw his daughter hunched over a small black bear. Sarah followed with wide eyes, her camera bag slipping from her shoulder. "Lily!" David shouted, panic lacing his voice as he hurried inside. "Are you all right? Did it hurt you?" Lily stood up, her eyes shining with anxious tears. "I'm fine, Dad. It's really weak, and I didn't know what else to do." Her parents exchanged a flurry of concerned looks. Sarah took a cautious step forward, her hands lifted in a calming gesture. She was a compassionate woman, known for her tender heart and love of animals. "Honey," she said softly, "you shouldn't have carried it. It could be dangerous." "It's hurt," Lily pleaded. "And it's just a baby. I couldn't let it die out there." David inhaled sharply, trying to process the situation. "Let me call the park rangers or a wildlife rehab center. We have to do this the right way." Sarah nodded in agreement, though her face revealed a swirl of emotions: pride at Lily's compassion and worry about having a wild animal in the garage. Lily, Step back a bit. Let's give it room to breathe. Reluctantly, Lily moved away. While David pulled out his phone, Sarah crouched down and observed the cub. It opened its eyes slightly, the dark pupils rolling to focus on her. She recognized the emaciated look of a creature that had likely gone days without proper nourishment or care. In hushed tones, David spoke to a local wildlife rescue group in Townsend. They confirmed they could send someone out, but it might be a couple of hours before they arrived, as their volunteers were spread thin. Keep it safe and don't try to feed it any strange foods, the representative advised. If it's too weak, you can offer water, but be very careful and watch out for signs of the mother bear nearby. After ending the call, David pressed his phone against his thigh, exhaling a long breath. They're coming, but not for a while. We need to keep it calm until then. Lily's eyes brimmed with tears. Dad, it doesn't look good. The bear can barely breathe. Sarah retrieved a shallow bowl of water and placed it near the cub. She dampened a clean cloth, carefully wiping the dirt from its snout. The bear squirmed, but its movements were feeble. Lily stayed close, her tiny hand occasionally reaching out to stroke its fur. Despite her parents' earlier warning, they did not have the heart to forbid her gentle gesture. It was clear that Lily's presence soothed the cub. 2 hours felt like an eternity. The volunteer rescue team, comprised of an experienced veterinarian, Dr. Emily Rutherford, and her assistant, Mark, finally arrived. They pulled up in an old truck bearing the emblem of the Tennessee Wildlife Rescue Coalition on the door. The low sunlight of late afternoon cast long shadows across the Mayfield driveway as they unloaded a few supplies: a pet carrier large enough for a medium-sized dog, a tranquilizer kit, and medical gear. David guided them into the garage, where Lily stood guard over the cub. Dr. Rutherford, a silver-haired woman in her 50s, knelt by the bear with calm professionalism, checking its vital signs: mouth, eyes, and paws. This little fellow is dehydrated and malnourished, but I see no broken bones, she explained, her voice low and comforting. Looks like a mild scratch on the muzzle, but nothing life-threatening. Could be separated from the mother. Possibly the mother was hit by a car, or, well, we can't be certain. Poor thing is definitely in distress. Mark readied a small injection while Dr. Rutherford held the cub steady. We're giving it a mild sedative to keep it from panicking on the way to the clinic, she said. Sound. Lily's heart squeezed when the bear let out a frightened wail as the needle slid into its flank. But soon it relaxed, drifting into a calmer state. Lily expected to feel relief. Yet a strange heaviness settled over her. This was not a simple rescue. She was losing something precious. The connection she had felt in those moments caring for the cub bound her to it, if only briefly. She wanted the cub to survive. She wanted it to have a future, and, in her mind, that future included seeing it again. When the rescue workers prepared to load the cub into the carrier, Lily burst out, "Wait, I can help. I can do something more. I want to keep helping." Dr. Rutherford and Mark exchanged gentle smiles, the kind adults give children when they appreciate the sentiment but doubt the feasibility. "We'll do everything we can," Dr. Rutherford assured. "He'll be in good hands at our center." But Lily insisted. She had read stories about wildlife rescues letting community members sponsor or foster animals, at least in some limited capacity. Her mother, Sarah, placed a reassuring hand on Lily's shoulder. "Sweetheart, these people know how to care for wildlife. We should trust them." "I know," Lily said, tears lining her cheeks. "But I feel responsible for him. I brought him in. I just want to make sure he gets better." Dr. Rutherford hesitated. She saw the earnestness in Lily's eyes. "Let's see how he does," she said gently. "If we believe outside help is needed beyond the rescue center, or if the cub would benefit from a quieter environment for recovery, we might reach out. But usually, we keep wild animals in specialized facilities until they're ready to be reintroduced to their habitat. Lily looked down, her shoulders sagging. Okay. With that, the rescue team took the cub away. Lily felt oddly hollow inside, as if she had lost a friend. Little did she know that this moment was the first step in a journey that would test her resilience, bring a community together, and forge bonds deeper than she could ever have imagined. In the days that followed, Lily called the Tennessee Wildlife Rescue Coalition for updates on the cub's progress. Each time they reassured her he was stabilizing, eating softened foods, and slowly regaining his strength. Sarah's quick blog post about Lily's compassionate act drew unexpected attention. Neighbors, friends, and even a local news station contacted them, showering Lily with both praise and caution about wild animal safety. The story triggered a small wave of donations to the rescue center, and while Lily felt a bit overwhelmed, she never lost sight of what mattered most, the cub's recovery. Soon, Dr. Rutherford invited the Mayfields to visit in person, giving Lily her first glimpse of the cub since the day he was taken away. On a chilly Saturday morning, Lily and her parents drove to the facility in Townsend, a modest building surrounded by wooded acreage. Fenced enclosures dotted the grounds where injured and recovering wildlife raccoons, foxes, birds of prey were kept under care. A separate barn, outfitted for larger animals, lay beyond the main office. Dr. Rutherford met them in the lobby. "I'm glad you came," she said, smiling warmly at Lily. "He's doing surprisingly well." They followed her to the barn, past rows of stalls. Some contained deer with bandaged legs, others housed large crates with sleeping coyotes. At the very end, behind a reinforced gate, Lily saw the cub. His fur, once dull and patched with dirt, had grown thicker and glossier. He paced restlessly, testing his weight on strong legs, and despite the chain-link barrier between them, Lily recognized the same eyes she'd gazed into in her garage. She pressed her hands to the fence, her breath hitching with excitement. "He looks so much better," Dr. Rutherford nodded. "We've been cautious about human interaction. Too much can make wild animals lose their natural fear of people, which is dangerous for them. But this little guy was in such bad shape when you found him. It took a lot of extra care to nurse him back. He's responding well, but he's still not quite ready to be released." David studied the cub. "Why not? He seems healthy now. It's not just about physical health," Dr. Rutherford explained. "He needs to learn survival skills, especially if he's been separated from his mother too soon. Usually, bear cubs stay with their mothers for over a year, sometimes up to 2 years, learning how to find food, what to avoid, and so on. If we release him prematurely, he may not make it through winter." Lily's face fell. "What will happen?" "We might transfer him to a larger wildlife rehab facility where they have more resources to teach him those foraging skills," said Dr. Rutherford. "However," she hesitated, "he's bonded to humans in a unique way, especially to you, Lily. If we move him abruptly, we risk upsetting him further. Bears can experience stress and trauma just like we do." Lily's mind whirled. She recalled the cub's terrified eyes when it collapsed in her yard. She could barely stand the thought of it going through another series of terrifying transitions. David's brow furrowed. "Is there a way we can help?" Dr. Rutherford looked thoughtful. "We have a special foster program, rarely used, for young wildlife that require quieter environments. The goal is to limit contact but still provide stable, secure surroundings. You live near the mountains, and your property is pretty secluded. If we fenced off a large section of your land and built a proper enclosure, we could mimic the environment. Then volunteers from the center could come daily to check on him, feed him the correct diet, and begin small-scale survival training. This might be easier for him than shipping him off to a bigger facility." Lily's heart leapt. "Yes," she cried. "We'll do it." Sarah and David exchanged glances. They had not planned for such an undertaking, caring for a wild bear, even in a professional, regulated foster capacity, was a massive responsibility. Dr. Rutherford explained that the main reason she even considered the arrangement was that Lily's family had proven themselves capable and compassionate, and the property's location was ideal, near enough to the mountains that the cub could eventually be released nearby, yet private enough to reduce human encounters. "There's a lot of red tape," Dr. Rutherford warned. "Permits, enclosure standards, ongoing oversight from wildlife officials. It won't be cheap or easy." Despite the obstacles, Lily's parents agreed to try. They saw how much this meant to Lily, an opportunity not just to help a vulnerable creature, but to grow from the responsibility. And so began a whirlwind of planning. Within days, Lily's backyard transformed into a modest yet carefully constructed enclosure. High, sturdy fencing topped with an overhang, a small heated shelter, and logs for climbing. Volunteers donated materials, and the Mayfields dipped into their savings for the rest. Lily would monitor the cub from outside, while rescue workers came daily with specialized feed. Finally, the cub arrived. Dr. Rutherford sedated him for transport, then released him into the enclosure. Lily watched from behind the fence, naming him Storm in her heart. Though she longed to be near, the goal was to keep Storm wary of humans so he could thrive once returned to the wild. The initial excitement faded as Lily realized how challenging it was to foster a wild bear. Even from a distance, the presence of a large animal demanded constant vigilance. Volunteers came daily, bringing special formulated feed designed to mimic the nutritional content a cub would find in the wild, a mixture of berries, nuts, insects, and proteins. Lily's father built a feeding chute through which the cub could receive his meals without associating the food directly with human hands. For Lily, the hardest part was maintaining boundaries. She wanted so badly to crawl into the enclosure, to sit beside Storm like she had in the garage, to stroke his coarse fur and assure him he wasn't alone. But Dr. Rutherford's instructions were clear: do not let the bear become habituated to humans. If Storm grew up thinking people were his friends, he would wander fearlessly into populated areas, risking conflict or worse. Lily knew it was best for him to remain distant, yet her heart ached every time she saw him pacing the fence line, or when he gazed toward the house from his shelter. Still, there were small moments that brought her joy, like the time a volunteer scattered acorns throughout the enclosure, prompting Storm to sniff them out. Lily watched him from afar, marveling at how his sense of smell led him unerringly to each hidden treat. Another evening, Lily tiptoed outside at dusk, just to catch a glimpse of Storm napping beneath a makeshift log lean-to. The glow of the porch light revealed his chest, rising and falling in a slow, steady rhythm, each exhale a soft rumble in the cool air. As winter settled in, Storm's thicker coat helped him face plummeting temperatures. The rescue team fortified his shelter with extra bedding and upped his calorie intake. Despite Lily's worries during a fierce cold snap, she followed Dr. Rutherford's advice to let the young bear adapt naturally. Each dawn, she peeked outside, relieved to see Storm shake off fresh snow and amble around, proving day by day that he could handle the season's harshness on his own. Gradually, Lily realized that nurturing a wild creature sometimes meant stepping back and trusting in its innate resilience. The harsh winter gradually yielded to the first hints of spring. Patches of green grass appeared in the yard, and birds returned from southern migrations, filling the mornings with song. As Storm grew stronger and more confident, the volunteers began introducing interactive feed puzzles, logs drilled with holes stuffed with berries, or hollowed out stumps where they hid seeds. Storm learned to pry them open, his powerful claws and keen nose guiding him to each meal. These sessions mimicked the foraging challenges he would face in the wild. Lily observed each new step from beyond the fence, charting Storm's progress in a small notebook. She doodled sketches of him, labeling them Storm tries to open a honey log, Storm playing with a tree stump. Each drawing came with notes on his behavior, how quickly he solved the puzzle, whether he showed hesitation, how much he ate. Over time, her notebook evolved into a personal journal, packed with observations, questions, and reflections on nature's resilience. Outside the pages of her notebook, Lily's life changed too. At school, her classmates asked about the famous bear she was helping. She found herself a bit more confident speaking up in class or volunteering for responsibilities. Something about her role in Storm's recovery had awakened a sense of purpose, a quiet assurance that she could make a difference. Rather than daydreaming aimlessly, she began to channel her creative energy into planning her future, imagining a career helping wild animals as a biologist or a veterinarian. She pored over library books about black bears, immersing herself in their life cycles, diets, habitats, and conservation statuses. Her teachers noticed her newfound passion and encouraged her to give a small presentation to her class about black bear safety and ecology. She spoke with trembling nerves at first, but by the end, she was lighting up with excitement, the words flowing easily. She had discovered that she loved sharing her enthusiasm for wildlife with others. Spring marched on, bringing April rains and a kaleidoscope of wildflowers. While Storm's health had generally improved, an unexpected setback arrived when he developed a slight limp in his hind leg. At first, it seemed minor, just a hesitation in his gait, but soon it worsened. Dr. Rutherford examined him, suspecting a pulled muscle or minor sprain. Yet days passed without improvement. Lily's anxiety returned in full force. Memories of the frail cub she first found in her yard surged back. She spent evenings hunched over the fence, whispering words of encouragement as Storm paced in obvious discomfort. The volunteers administered mild anti-inflammatories through his food, but Storm's limp persisted, making Lily worry about a deeper problem. Weeks later, Dr. Rutherford recommended an X-ray at the clinic to rule out a fracture. With a heavy heart, Lily watched the rescue team sedate Storm and load him into a truck. She feared that once again she'd see him disappear, unsure if he'd ever return. But the facility was now like a second home to him. They took the necessary images, discovering a tiny hairline fracture near his ankle. It was likely from an awkward step or a fall during play. The recommended treatment was extended rest, no climbing, no rough terrain, minimal movement. For a wild animal, such a prescription was nearly impossible. Rather than keep him caged at the rescue center for weeks, Dr. Rutherford decided it was safer to keep him in the Mayfield's enclosure with close supervision. "We'll limit the climbing logs," she explained. "Lower them so he can't injure himself further." The plan also involved daily check-ins from a volunteer who would ensure Storm's condition improved. Lily promised to be vigilant, noting every detail of Storm's behavior in her trusty notebook. The following month tested Lily's patience more than ever before. Storm, bored and restless from a forced reduction in activity, became irritable, pawing at the fence, grunting in agitation. He tried to climb, ignoring the lowered logs. Each time Lily saw him testing his hurt leg, she felt a stab of guilt, wondering if she was somehow failing him. Still, she obeyed Dr. Rutherford's instructions and minimized her interactions, even though she was desperate to comfort him. A rainy afternoon in May brought a breakthrough. Lily stood on the porch, arms folded against a chilly wind, watching Storm. The sky had broken loose with thunderous downpours, soaking the enclosure's soil. Storm had sought refuge in his shelter for hours. Then, just as Lily considered stepping inside, Storm emerged, carefully placing weight on his hind leg. He limped, but noticeably less so. He sniffed the air, blinked at the falling rain, and let out a short, sharp huff, almost a challenge to the stormy sky. Slowly he walked the perimeter, ignoring the logs, as if testing his range of motion. Lily's heart soared. She prayed silently for his full recovery, urging him on. Over the next week, his limp faded. The volunteers gave him more puzzle feeders and logs again, gradually increasing his exercise. By early June, Storm was bounding around with renewed vigor. The hairline fracture had healed, a testament to the resilience built into every sinew of his wild nature. Lily felt an enormous wave of relief. She also sensed that Storm was reaching the next stage of his journey, inching closer to his wild destiny. By late summer, Storm had grown exponentially. His once scrawny frame had thickened with muscle. His coat gleamed with health, a deep black shade with a faint brownish muzzle. He devoured the interactive feeding challenges, showing keen intelligence and curiosity. Observers from the local branch of the Fish and Wildlife Service came by to assess him, nodding in approval at his progress. "We think he'll be ready for release before winter sets in," Dr. Rutherford told Lily's family. "He's young, but he's learned enough to forage. The best chance for him is to reintegrate him into a wild area with sufficient resources." Fear and joy warred in Lily's chest. She had known this day would come. The entire point of fostering was to return Storm to the life nature intended. Yet the idea of letting go felt like slicing away a piece of her heart. She spent hours in her room, tears slipping from her eyes as she thought of an empty enclosure. She confided in her parents, who reminded her of the bigger picture. "We did this so he could be free, Lily," her mother said gently. "Not so he could stay in a cage, no matter how well we cared for him." Lily resolved to be strong, for Storm's sake. Over the next few weeks, Dr. Rutherford prepared a plan with the park rangers. They identified a suitable release site near Cades Cove, an area abundant in natural food sources, oak trees for acorns, streams for fish and crayfish, and dense forests for shelter. Storm was nearing a year old, still a juvenile, but older cubs had survived in the wild with less preparation. The entire rescue team was optimistic. On a bright morning in early autumn, the release day finally arrived. A tranquil hush fell over the Mayfield backyard as volunteers gathered to sedate Storm one last time. Lily held back, tears in her eyes, but determined to watch. She expected to see fear in Storm's eyes, but instead he seemed only mildly concerned. Maybe, on some instinctual level, he sensed the next phase. Dr. Rutherford administered the sedation quickly, and Storm's lids grew heavy. A large transport crate awaited, complete with straw bedding for the short trip. Carefully, they guided him inside. Lily placed her hand on the cold metal bars for a moment, silently thanking him for everything he had taught her about courage and compassion. She almost wanted to say goodbye out loud, but she knew speaking to him too much might only confuse him. So she stood quietly, letting the gravity of the moment wash over her. The volunteers lifted the crate onto a truck. Lily and her parents followed in their own car, trailing the rescue convoy toward the national park. The drive passed in reflective silence. When they arrived at the designated release point, Lily stepped out, inhaling the crisp air tinted with the rich scent of turning leaves. Cades Cove stretched before them in a tapestry of rolling fields, shimmering creeks, and thick woods glowing in red, gold, and orange hues. If there was a paradise for black bears, it was here. The rescue team set the crate down at the edge of a thicket. They gave Storm a mild antidote to reverse the sedative so he could wake on his own. Then everyone pulled back. Lily's heart pounded, her eyes never leaving the crate. Time slowed, each second marking the end of one story and the start of another. A low groan echoed inside the crate. Storm stirred, blinking, Disoriented, slowly he rose on all fours, sniffing the air. Dr. Rutherford eased the gate open. For a long moment, Storm hesitated, as if unsure whether to step out. Then a gust of wind swept through the clearing, carrying the scent of the forest to him. He emerged, his nose twitching, ears perked, taking tentative steps into the wild. Everyone stood still, resisting the urge to cheer or speak. Storm paused, glanced around, then ambled deeper into the brush, eventually disappearing behind the tall grasses and bramble. Lily's hands trembled at her sides. She strained her ears for any sign of him, perhaps a rustle. A small grunt, but nature reclaimed its silence. He was gone, free. Her chest felt both hollow and filled with an inexplicable, stirring awe. She thought about the day she found him collapsed in her yard, so close to death. Now, he vanished into the forest as a healthy, vibrant young bear, ready to carve his own path. Dr. Rutherford placed a comforting hand on Lily's shoulder. "You gave him a chance at life, Lily. That's a big gift." Tears of mingled sadness and joy slid down Lily's cheeks. She swallowed hard, turning to her parents, who embraced her. She had never felt so close to them, so grateful for their support. In that moment, Lily understood that real love sometimes means letting go. The forests of the Smokies would be Storm's true home, a place where he belonged. She had played her part and now could only hope he thrived in that boundless realm of wild possibilities. The Mayfields drove away from Cade's Cove that afternoon, feeling a poignant mix of sorrow and triumph. Though Lily's backyard enclosure now stood empty, her heart brimmed with lessons she would carry forever. Compassion knows no limits. Resilience can flourish even when life seems most fragile, and love sometimes demands that we stand aside so another can truly live. Word of Storm's successful release spread through the local community, reminding people of the power of kindness and the fragile bond between humans and the wild world around us. If Lily could speak to everyone who followed their story, she would say, never doubt the impact of one simple act of care. And please, if this story moved you at all, consider liking this video, sharing it with friends, and subscribing for more tales that celebrate hope, courage, and the beautiful connections we share with nature. Your support helps keep these stories alive.